Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Let me ask you a question. I've got notes over here because I got to keep myself in check, trying to be a little bit more professional with this. So let me ask you a question. How many business English course books have you seen that start with something like at the airport, in a meeting, checking into a hotel? Yeah, way too many, right? But here's the truth. Most professionals don't need help asking for a boarding pass. They need help not sounding awkward during the first 5 minutes of a Zoom call. That's what they need. Or figuring out how to wrap up a conversation with a client without feeling abrupt and then ruining the entire relationship that they just built up. So in other words, business English isn't about boardrooms and presentations. It's about conversations, relationships. And today we're going to talk about how you can teach the small talk, the micro moments, and the relationship building side of business English that most materials actually just completely ignore. It's not very tangible for them, so they just discard.
Hey there, it's Kelly, and if you're here for miracle fixes, shiny classroom hacks, or whatever today's buzzword is trending, yeah, not gonna happen. What you will get is real talk about English teaching, teacher training, and the chaos we actually deal with in ELT. So let's get into it.
All right, so we need to, tip number one, we'll count it down, right? Tip number one, we need to focus on the in-between moments. So think of a typical work day, and the real connections don't happen in those like official presentations. They happen before and after. Water cooler talk, all of that stuff, here and there, building relationships. If you're in an office, that's how it works. And it's even harder if you're working remotely because it's mostly by Slack and all of that good stuff. So let me give you an example that I've cooked up. I've got notes. Let's stay on track. An engineer joins a Zoom call with his colleagues in the US. And before the meeting starts, someone says, "How's your week going?" And just panic. The learner freezes. Why? Because it's not something in a textbook. It's not a pre-prepared answer that they can just pop out. They got to kind of, interact with someone in a natural way. So in many cultures, small talk isn't a part of professional communication. So it feels fake, it kind of feels unnecessary, and sometimes learners often have the vocabulary, but they just don't have the flexibility to make it casual, if that makes sense. They've got enough, they've got language, but they can't switch registers. So how do we teach this? Well, I would create, if I were you, here's an option. You don't have to use this if you don't want it. Small talk scripts. So, for example, the student can say something like, "Oh, it's been busy, but good. How about yours?" So the teacher needs to model like these types of things: rising tone, relaxed pacing, variations, if they're tired, if they're cheerful, if they're a little bit rushed. I tend to ask my students at the beginning of every class in a different way. So sometimes I'll ask them about their weekend. Sometimes I'll ask them about news, things that are happening. Sometimes I'll ask them about, like, we have small talk every single class, and it's always varied. And I always give them feedback on the board because usually they write it down like the pair, like a question and answer, so that if it pops up, they always have these little cheat sheets. Most of my people work remotely the majority of the time. So they kind of had just like these little post-it cheat sheets around, and then they use those. But they need to have these moments of practicing it. You can't just give them the language and say, like, this is what you do and say in this situation. Wrong. Like, okay, that's great for input, but then there's no production, there's no practicing afterwards. So it's the same thing. So do it at the beginning of every class, those first 5 minutes where everybody's just trying to kind of orienting themselves to what's going to happen. Have a little small talk. If you have an extended class, 90 minutes or more, break it into a couple different lessons, and then in between have some water cooler talk. Go grab a coffee, have a chit chat with your student. They need to know how to do this, because if they're seen as aloof or rude, trust me, because I was considered that when I got here to Brazil. I was not a fan of small talk. I'm very Bostonian in terms of like, if I don't know you, I'm gonna say hi. I'm not gonna be unfriendly, but also like I'm not going to. It's not the same as Brazilians who will tell you every aspect of their life while you're drinking a coffee with them and you've never met them before, or standing in the line of the grocery store. And then I get podcast episodes, honestly, in the line of the grocery store or the bank. So it was very different. Huge culture shock for me. Know how to do small talk, but you gotta practice. Gotta practice. Yeah. So, and then when you're giving them feedback, just because I'm looking at my notes and making sure that I'm including all of these tidbits for you. When you're giving them feedback, do give them feedback not only on language, but tell them what felt more natural and which sounded a little bit robotic, because that's going to help them out. Yeah. So they have to have that information. They have to know what's going on with it, like their delivery, because if they sound weird, it's better to sound weird in class than to like interact with a coworker like that. Just saying.
Super quick, I promise. If you're looking for a teaching certification, specialization, even a micro-credential, Bridge EDU is a solid pick. And with my link, you get 10% off any course they offer. Check out the link below and let's get back to it.
Okay, so teaching tip number 2, we have to teach tone. I kind of mentioned this in the first tip, but teach tone, relationship signals, and it's not just about words. So I know that we're language teachers, but here's the kicker. Most misunderstandings, especially in like business English scenarios, is that it's not about vocabulary. It's all about tone. So imagine this. I got another example cooked up for you. A Brazilian professional, very warm and cheerful and nice, sends an email, send me the report. Totally fine in Portuguese. Sometimes, like it, because it just, I don't think they would be offended by it. But in English, like that sounds bad, because probably in Portuguese they would phrase it a little bit differently, but they're trying to be direct because they know that in English people typically tend to be a little bit more direct. So we got to teach them softeners and relationship signals. There's some parrots squawking outside. So instead of send me the report, we got to give them could you send me the report when you get a chance, instead of saying like, I disagree. Got to hedge it in there, right? So like, I see your point, but I think we might look at this a different way. We got to teach them how to buffer some of the messages, because especially when they're just, how do I say this? They have just enough where they're starting to interact in more meaningful ways and they're starting to engage in more complex conversations. Sometimes the simple and direct can be misinterpreted. So, international teams, tone equals professionalism. And without these little adjustments, your learners are going to be at risk of being misread as unfriendly or uncooperative. I was certainly misread as being very rude. I'm direct, but I didn't know how to be direct but pleasant and friendly. Still don't. In Portuguese, still a problem. I'm just, at this point, it's just a personality flaw, I think. I don't know. But I'm still learning how to deliver messages that I consider to be direct, but that my husband reminds me frequently that are slightly rude. So what I would do, classroom activities that you can do to address this. So take a real email, Slack message, something that you can share with your student, or that your student can share with you, and rewrite it in 3 tones. Do something very neutral, do something very friendly, and then do something formal. And then discuss the differences. Look at it. Just look at the language and say, hey, look, okay, so this will probably be better for a colleague, but this is not great for a boss, and vice versa. And then you can have them practice saying the sentence out loud using different intonations and say, okay, so this was an email or a message, this was written. Now let's transfer this into something that you need to deliver orally and practice that. So, I mean, it's very simple. And beautiful part about that, it's authentic. It's a real message from their workplace. Great. And it can be a message that they get frequently, that they respond or have to respond in their mother tongue, but then you guys kind of like translate it. That works too. For real, it works. Okay, tip number 3, build confidence in spontaneous speech. Here's the thing. Most professionals can prepare a presentation. This is not a skill. I think that AI can prepare presentations for people now. Like, we're not worried about presentations anymore. That's not on our top list. What scares people is being able to react to things when they're on the spot. They have no preparation and then they gotta respond. So imagine, and another example, that somebody asks you, what do you think about this proposal? And the student, they know what they think, but they don't have that kind of ready-made structure to answer. Like they got to give their opinion, so we got to give them some functional language. Maybe they have some functional language, but it's on the spot and they feel very nervous about it. So what you can teach is some formulas. I like to teach buffers. I enjoy those moments where you can say, I just need 1 second or maybe 3 seconds to digest what just happened and be able to formulate a reasonable response to it. So I teach buffers. Like, I think it's a good thing. It's a strategy. If you need a second to kind of compose yourself and be able to then say something. So that's a great question. Perfect. I got 2 seconds out of that. So start with a buffer, then organize. I see 2 key points. Again, it's kind of stalling, but it's allowing them to kind of organize in their mind, and then they can close, and then they can give their opinion. So buffer, totally just getting time. Organize, summarizing and clarifying, making sure that whatever was said is what was intended to be understood, and then you can close it. So overall, I'd recommend, and then you give your opinion. You've gained a lot of time to be able to kind of muddle your way through that. So how can you do this in a classroom? Well, you can do a rapid fire Q&A. You can put learners on the spot with common workplace questions. This is where you kind of have to know your students. Maybe you can collect these over a month or so and then hit them with it. And then you can coach them to buy time gracefully. This is all we're doing. We're buying time because students on the spot are going to panic. It's not a good thing. So we don't want that. It also builds confidence not because they know every phrase and they know how to respond to everything immediately like that. Not everybody does. To be honest, let's be honest, not everybody knows how to do that in their own language, let alone a second language. So yeah, buying time is great. But it gives them confidence because they know how to start without freezing, without looking like they're searching for words. Yeah. So what I'd like to do, let's recap, shall we? We need to focus on the in-between moments, not just the big business events, the things, AI is going to do most of it for them anyways, but we have to focus on those in-between moments, the human moments. So we have to teach them tone, relationship signals, not just vocabulary. Functional language helps a lot, I understand, but most of the time it's how the message is being delivered. And we have to build some formulas and confidence for spontaneous speech. Personally, I like buffers, kind of a mini summary, just double checking I understood, then let me give my opinion, let me respond. So do that. And I think your learners will stop sounding like robots next time they have a meeting with colleagues. So that's my little spiel here. Let me tell you about, let me just double check my notes here that I have my little bullets. I have to make sure that I check. Yep. And so now just remember, you don't have to figure it out all for yourself because, hey, it takes a while for people to figure these things out. I am an affiliate with Bridge EDU. They have some micro-credentialing programs. One of their micro-credential courses, which I will link below, is the Business English course, and it'll walk you through teaching some of these skills step by step. Plus, I can drop that link right in the description, and if you click on it, then hey, 10% off of the course. That works too. I also have some book suggestions I'll be throwing in the, I don't even know what to call it, description, show notes, whatever this is. That I guess is a podcast. Anyways, tips, the tips of this episode. So I'll throw some links to some books that helped me along the way, especially when I was trying to sort myself out in the beginnings of business English. I think that's it for today. I don't know. Let me just double check. Yeah. That's it for today. That's all I have for business English tips for today. I'm sure I'll have more, but now what you get to do is go help your learners shine in those real communication moments, not just presentations. Yeah, those staged ones. So until next time.
That's it for today. If you want more, I've got binge-worthy playlists right here on the channel. You can also grab some resources at kellypenningtonelt.com, Instagram at kellypenningtonelt, and yes, even LinkedIn, where I do my best impression of being professional. Links below. See you in the next one.